It's time to set sail, for in this review, we're taking a look at Farshore, part of the new Everdell spin-off line, Edge of the Map. Games in these series will be set in the Everdell universe, each designed to be their own standalone game based on the previous Everdell mechanics and, as I said, world. Now, let's see whether Farshore sails to be its own unique game, or rather, maybe lands a bit too close to home. The game in this video was provided to Roll4Crit by its creators or publishers. Only the game was provided for the making of this video. So just like its sibling Everdell, this takes up quite a bit of space. And if you've already played Everdell, you'll probably already recognize a lot of what's on the board and can guess how the game plays. That said, if you've never played Everdell, or obviously Farshore, this is the basis of the game. Your goal is to get the most points over 4 seasons in order to prepare for next winter. On your turn, you can take one of 3 actions. You can either place a worker, play a card from your hand, or from the central lineup, known as the Bay here, or you can pass into next season. Playing a worker is like placing a worker in any other game. Place it on the spot and use it to get resources. Now, the top is the shore, those are always the same, while the bottom are islands, and these may change between games. Now, there are 2 types of spots you'll need to keep an eye out for. First, they're the single footprints. These can only hold 1 meeple. However, here at the docks is a much larger one with 3 footprints that can hold any number of meeple. The next action you can take is playing a card. Like I said, it can come from your hand or the bay. To play a card, simply put it in front of you in what is known as a city and pay the cost in the left side corner. Keep in mind though, you may only hold 15 cards in your city, so as the game progresses, you will have less space for you to fit more cards. Finally, there's passing. That means going into the next season. You will start in winter, moving then into spring, summer, fall. However, when you pass, you do not wait for everyone else to pass. Instead, you will move on to the next season on your own. So, hypothetically, 1 person could be in spring, while 2 are in summer, and then 1 has somehow rushed into fall. Now, each season change has its own unique little rules, but for the most part, you're going to get all your workers back from the board. You're also going to get a new worker added to your pool to use, allowing you to take more actions and gather more resources as the game progresses. You'll repeat that for 4 seasons, adding up all the points, and hopefully you come up on top. Now, that is the basis for both Everdell and Farshore. Let's go over the differences. First, you may notice those 2 big tokens labeled A and B. Every time you play a card, you will check if your card matches one or both of those tokens. For each token it matches, you will move your ship up along this track. This track will give you more points at the end of the game. It's not keeping track of your points. There are also these treasure symbols. Anytime you hit that, you're going to get one of those treasure tokens up there. Those can either be used spent as a wild resource or give you 2 points at the end of the game, so spend them wisely. Next, there are the map fragments up there. The map goals replace the 2 major goals in Everdell, one which was the same, which usually required just like that 3 or 4 of a kind of these cards, while the other one was more specific, requesting either specifically a cartographer and the port together, something like that. Here, it's simply the stack of map fragments. Anytime you meet those goals, you can send one of your meeple there and take the top map fragment from that pile. With each map fragment that I'm able to attain, it will increase how much they are worth. Now, to explain scoring, let's say these were the map fragments we got at the end of the game. They score based on how many other fragments you were able to collect. You cannot collect more than 1 of each type, meaning the most you can get is 6. Now, the way this scores, you count the number of map fragments, and each one scores equal to that number times what's here. Now, for example, these 2 are number of map fragments times 2, meaning that we have 4, so each of them are worth 8. This one is worth 4 points as it's map fragments times 1, meaning 4 times 1 is 4. This is 0 times map fragments, meaning 0, but it did boost the other fragments. So even if you're the last one to get a fragment, it will hopefully boost your other fragments. Another big change comes to how you can play some of those critters for free. In Everdell, specific places held room for specific critters. So for example, a post office could be used to play a postal pigeon for free. Here, instead of having exact names, you are given 3 anchors at the beginning of the game. So let's say we didn't play this navigator. If we didn't have the resources or didn't want to pay for the navigator, we could place an anchor on a matching card type that is the construction in order to play this navigator for free. Keep in mind, you're only given 3, meaning you can only do that up to 3 times. Finally, the other big change I want to go over is back to the seasons. Usually, you just do what the season says, but there are now some bigger bonus points. Those 2 tokens I mentioned before that help you move the ship, those are going to replace after the last player from that season leaves the season. So as long as someone's in spring, those will not change. But once the last person leaves spring, then those could change, meaning that the cards you thought that would give you a bonus could change after the last person tries to catch up. And then once someone leaves the last summer space, they're actually going to sink some of these islands, meaning that some of these stronger spaces are going to become less available in the final rounds. Your total score will be all the cards, plus your map fragments, plus where your boat is located. And if you happen to play any cards that score you points, those shells up there just give you those extra point counters. Add up your total and see if you win. Now, in the solo mode, you'll go up against Captain Bonnie Redclaw. First, you're going to choose a difficulty, basically how fast her ship moves if she matches the compass, and if you are going to use the weather cards. They will add 1 or possibly 2, depending on your difficulty, negative effects that you're going to have to keep out for each season. Whenever you and the captain leave a season, you'll actually change the weather course, revealing a new card, changing what negative effects you have to keep an eye out for. Next, there's this little card here with these symbols. Randomly reveal a symbol to put into each column, placing these 3 at the 3, the green at the 4, and the purple at the 2. You see, whenever Bonnie's going to play a card, let's say, for example, she plays this navigator, it's going to move a matching symbol up 1 if it's still on the card. If for whatever reason it leaves the card, then she'll be able to take the top map fragment, which usually will occur when she changes seasons. Now, on the captain's turn, if she has a pawn, she's going to flip over the top of her deck, which will tell her where she wants to place the pawn. If these 2 spots aren't available, she'll go down here. Basically, you're going to go from top to bottom until she can do a legal move. If all her workers are placed, she will then start playing cards. First, she'll play from her hand, which is a face-down deck that you don't know anything about, but if her hand is empty, she'll start playing from the bay, choosing cards based on which one of these are closest to the top. Now, she'll keep doing that until you pass, in which case she will always pass right after you. At the end of the game, she will score very similar to the other player based on where her ship is, based on map fragments she's captured. But when it comes to cards she's played, all cards are basically considered blank with the exception of what type they are. If the typing is a purple card, it's going to be worth 6 points. Every other type will be worth 2 points. Hopefully, depending on the difficulty, you'll have enough points to still be able to take on this captain and come out on top. So for those who know Everdell, you probably were watching this and were like, did I just watch Everdell? And I think you're sort of correct there. You see, when I first heard about this spin-off game line with the edge of the map, this one being the first one, Farshore, I thought, okay, this is going to be something very different, be it a huge change like it's now a war game versus the worker placement, or even something like Legendary where this one is the fully cooperative one. Here, it's got changes and differences, but they're not the kind of thing that make it feel like an actual true standalone. This feels more like they wanted to add a nautical coat of paint as well as make some few tweaks. Now, yes, there are some things that I think are very unique to this system, and I'm not just talking about the art. It's got these cool new mechanics, in particular, the rose compass with the ship and the treasures. The rose compass works really nicely as it forces you to change when you want to play certain things. Not only that, once you play enough, you sort of know like, okay, the green farm symbol hasn't come up yet, so that's probably going to be in the last round. I want to save some cards there to play then. And then, of course, the treasure resources. First, it's always nice to have a wild as it just gives you a bit more wiggle room if you just can't find that one more resource. But the treasures here give you a choice of spending right away for a short turn to build something, or wait for that long term and give you 2 points at the end of the game. I love when they add these choices because they're the kind of thing that always changes based on what scenario you're currently in. Maybe you really need to play a card for that rose compass I mentioned before, or to get a certain bonus before the season ends. Or maybe you feel like that's not worth it. If I can get a bunch of treasures, it's going to be a huge bonus point at the end of the game. These kinds of decisions will always change depending on where you're at in a game, which helps add to that replayability. But when you think of some of the other changes you may have seen during the overhead, they don't feel like out of left field, completely new things. Rather, they feel like changes you would make as an update to the previous game. To me, this feels less like we have a whole new game in the world of Everdell, but rather a remaster like remake you see in video games. It shares a lot of it, not just mechanics. Like, yes, we got a sea theme going on, but we still got the cute critters, which don't get me wrong, I love, but they're very similar. We've got another huge central piece that is there to show off and still fit on the camera, even though the table is down below. And then the changes just feel like fixes to the previous version. For example, in previous Everdell, you were required to have specific cards. Don't get me wrong, I love the flavor of the postal pigeon living in the post office. But it can be really annoying if you can't find whatever other specific card you need. Same thing with some of those goals they had in the previous Everdell. Here, they've removed that by adding more of the just specific card type to the map fragments, as well as making it so you can move any villager into any building regardless of the names, just has to match type, but you can only do it 3 times because you're given 3 anchors to spend for that. So it removes that specificity and then gives you just more options to play with. And then those map fragments also fix the problem if you've played original Everdell, those goals there are only one of, so it's really first come, first served. And if you were trying to build up for that, but someone was just a turn ahead of you and took it, well, then that means you completely get nothing from that. Here, that's sort of true. The person gets the top map fragment is going to get a lot more points, but you can still get the lower map fragments and they can still help you. So not all is lost. These are all great changes, don't get me wrong. But like I said, they feel more like updates to mechanics rather than something new and interesting. The reason that I'm harping on this so much is because when you take it all in, it just feels, like I said, a remastered Everdell. And if that's the case, if you already have Everdell, why should you buy this? In video games, one of the big reasons to buy it is one, playing on a system, so you might not have that older system anymore, but also they up the graphics. You know, the new Resident Evil 4 compared to when it first came out looks much nicer. Here, on the other hand, it still looks, both of them look very nice. The art is really beautiful. So visually speaking, it is not a decrease or a significant increase at the very least. Both of them are still going to be very stunning when they hit the table, not just because the art, but like I said, they got these 3D pieces, the really fancy resources. It's designed to be a deluxe game. But that all said, then it comes at a deluxe price. So when you look at both of them and you already have one, I really, it's hard for me to come up with a reason. Those changes are nice, but not buying the core all over again nice. And if you don't have either, well, then things get a bit more interesting at very least. If you are the kind of person who likes getting a lot of expansions, especially if you want to see games that have really different mechanics or rules, you'll probably lean more Everdell because that one has tons of expansions. Each of them add a whole new board, which really increase your table space and just can add weird hiccups and really change up gameplay that way. Farshore would be more rewarding for people who just want a one-and-done purchase. To my knowledge, there is not, nor are any expansions planned in the future for anything on the edge of the map line. So if you just wanted to buy the one game and be happy with it, Farshore is definitely going to be probably your more enjoyable experience. And I would say, yeah, if you had to compare the two, just the bases, Farshore does, I think, inch ahead a little bit more, at least me personally. I think it just plays a little bit smoother as it feels like just taking some of the problems in Everdell and fixing them. But Everdell, one, is older and a lot more people may already own it. And all those expansions do help it push it out in at least that kind of direction. But it's not enough for me to say these are two different beasts. Unfortunately, as much as I like the Everdell games and Farshore as well, this is not doing anything to me that I can safely, comfortably say they both earn a spot on your shelf. Crits and misses for Farshore. Crits. While I enjoy previous Everdell, I felt like there were some problems that punish players just because of how certain cards came out, and I feel this game does a good job of removing a lot of those issues. Instead of having very specific cards requiring very specific combinations, this, through the anchor system and the map fragment system, removes that, making it so you can build more of what you need and want at the time, rather than looking for an exact name card. The same can be said for the other new mechanics. Treasures give you a wild, also points, as well as the Winrose Compass rewarding you for playing certain cards in certain rounds. And of course, the map fragments, while if you're earlier to get a map fragment, you get more points, you still will be rewarded for gaining any number of map fragments, as they'll boost up the points of previous ones you've already collected. Farshore keeps up with its Everdell counterparts with its high quality pieces and components. You'll always feel like you'll have a deluxe version, be it with all the cute little resources or the adorable art featuring all the little critters residing in this amazing world. Misses. Unfortunately, while it says standalone, I don't feel like this is its own standalone game in terms of adding it to your collection. If you already own Everdell, this just feels like a small minor upgrade and not something that is going to add a completely different experience, nor something that can be mixed with previous Everdell as a sort of standalone playstyle expansion that will increase your entire Everdell gaming experience. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to decide, do I just want to buy Farshore or do I want to invest in Everdell, which has all the different expansions? And if you already own one, you're probably not going to feel the need to buy the other. I feel bad that I'm harping on this so much, even though my actual play experience was almost generally positive. I did have a lot of fun with this game. I already like the Everdell system, and I think a lot of the changes here are great. But they don't make me feel like I'm playing an entirely new game. And there are two reasons why you would do that. One is theme. And this is before anyone comments like, what about the DC deck building game? And then they have the Rick and Morty one or the Street Fighter. Yes, they had some slight changes here and there, but it's still the core same way to play. But you already get that enjoyment of something new because it's that theme. If you're a Street Fighter fan, you're like, oh man, I actually get to play with these characters now. And here, while we have a more nautical theme, I wouldn't call that a huge shift enough for me to say the theme change is enough to make me want to purchase this. So then, if that's the case, you want to stay in this world, which they do, then you got to make the mechanics much more appealing and different. And while they did make some changes, they're not the huge changes that I want to see in a standalone. They're not the kind of thing that make me excited to have them all on a shelf to be able to pull off and be like, all right, today we're going to do this one. This is because we have a huge play group, or this is the one I want to take out because all of you want to play a much more aggressive game with hidden roles and such. This is just taking off Everdell off the shelf. I think it is a great purchase for you if you don't have anything in the line. It's probably the one I would choose because it's a one and done purchase. It makes changes to some of the things I had in issues with previous Everdell, but it just doesn't actually feel like a true standalone to Everdell. It really comes down to, do you want those expansions or not? Otherwise, if you already own Everdell, you could probably stick with that or get this new version. They're nice. It's not going to be something that in and of itself is bad. It's just bad in how they developed it. Hopefully, future games in the Edge of the Map series actually push the boundaries, yes, pun intended there, and actually give us something a bit more different. It could still be in the world of Everdell, even have set collecting in some way, but just something that makes it feel like I'm not just rebuying the game. Let me know your thoughts if you've purchased this game because you want everything in Everdell, or if this is the first time in the world of Everdell and you decided to buy this one over original Everdell. I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, but for now, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Crit review.